Nathan, we're back. Another quick Blue Sense pod episode. I wanted to talk to you today about retention specifically, and really specifically on that, like, why is the Blue Sense ethos that paid really should have nothing or very, very little to do with retention as part of your sort of media mix and revenue composition. I think this is something that comes up all the time across a range of different categories that we look at. So really see our clients fitting into three buckets. You've either got a single product that's driving 90+% of revenue. That's something you typically purchase once. Retention for them is inherently just going to be very, very low just by the nature of the dynamics of their business, unless they're looking at developing a new product. You've got CPG brands where retention's absolutely huge for them. And then you've got fashion brands where it's much more seasonally or collection driven. And the way that paid media sits across all of those is something that we see pretty routinely across almost all sizes of business, and a lot of inefficiencies. I guess to start us off, like, where does that core thesis that we hold start or come from?
Yeah. So I think everyone began asking themselves the question of how much spend should we allocate to existing customers when Meta rolled out Advantage Plus like 1.5 years ago, maybe 1 year ago. And there was that little toggle in Advantage Plus campaigns back then where you could click it and you could set a percentage allocation to existing customers. That really got people thinking through the lens of, what kind of spend allocation should we actually put here? Should it be 10%? Should it be 0? Should it be 50? And at that point, that's when we really clued onto it, going, okay, we haven't thought through this problem probably in enough detail, which is, what does spend allocation towards existing customers look like? And the answer is that allocation of spend towards existing customers, spend as much as it's incremental, right? If you're going to get 100 returning customers next month, and you could spend on ads and get 150, we'll probably spend on ads and get 150, right? But the reality is that spending on existing customers is nowhere near as incremental as people think it is. And people fall into this trap because they rely on attributed return on ad spend numbers. And they go, well, our existing customer spend is getting us a 3x. Our new audience spend is getting us a 2x. And therefore, we're probably spending a good amount. We could maybe even spend more on existing customers. But it fails to consider that attribution, particularly 7-day click, 1-day view, is going to just substantially over attribute its impact, number one. And number two is that it fails to account for the diminishing returns as you layer spend up to that blended figure, which is pretty complicated when you say it out loud, and I can't sketch it as an example. But like a super simple example, which is unrealistic, but just keeping it really simple so people can understand the concept, is if you went and spent $1,000 on ads and it got you 10 customers, returning customers, you then went and spent $2,000 on ads, but it got you 11 returning customers, you just spent an extra $1,000 for only one extra order. Now, why would you do that? Like, who is possibly doing that? Well, everyone's doing it because they don't care about what the incremental orders is as they lay a spend up. Instead, they're just looking at the blended ROAS number. And so when they see a 3 ROAS, they go, that's good, that's fine, let's move on. But they don't realize that they could probably cut half of that spend out and they would still maintain majority of the order volume that they were getting anyway. And their ROAS will actually go to like a 15 on returning customers. And so you should actually have a much higher expectation of ROI on returning customer spend, because it actually isn't that incremental once you push past a certain point.
Yeah, it makes sense. And so I think like this starts from the sort of couple of core metrics that we look at initially in an audit, being their relationship between cost to acquire a genuinely new customer and the profit they make when they acquire that customer versus what their profit contribution looks like from that cohort of customers over time. And so I think this is another area where a lot of brands don't sort of think through what that retention component looks like, because it actually has an impact up the funnel as well, in terms of if that, like we see this all the time, brands saying, my returning customer rate is 20%, 25%. 55% if it's a really great brand. But it sort of belies the, like, how much profit are those customers actually coming back and bringing to the business? How does that impact, I guess, that discussion around whether they should be spending on this part of their funnel or not?
Yeah. So if a brand is reliant, there's a lot of caveats to the
Mm,
statement, don't spend on existing customers. I just like the statement because it applies to most people. But like
mm,
70% of people watching this don't spend on existing customers, move on with your life. It might be a little bit incremental, but it should be fine. But for 30% of people, you actually do need to spend there. It's obviously just balancing the spend, and most people substantially overspend. In the case of CPG and brands that have really good retention, and so let's say that after 1 year of acquiring a customer, they double their profit on that customer. And so that's a business that's obviously very reliant on retention. It also means that they can go very aggressive on acquisition. And so this is when you see CPG and consumable and supplement brands break even on acquisition or even go negative. And so they'll spend more to acquire a customer than the gross profit they make on the first order because they're so confident that that person will come back a second, third, fourth time through the first year and they'll make it all back and more. And they can actually be very profitable in doing so. When you're running an exercise like that, and when you're running a business model like that, which we do for a few clients, you then need to be extra careful about returning
mm,
customer spend because you're assuming that all of that lift, all of that returning customer revenue after acquisition is free. You're assuming there's no cost associated with it. But that's not true if you're going and then spending on the platforms to try to get these people back. And we see that a fair bit where people will, particularly in audits, where we'll see people running a break even acquisition strategy on a CPG product, which is fine, like good aggressive way to scale. But then they're also dropping 50, 60 grand a month into trying to get customers to come back on second, third, fourth purchase. And it's like, well, if returning customers is your profit center that's making the business profitable, and then you're diluting that to zero by going out and allocating a bunch of spend there, you
mm.
break the whole model. And so you need to make sure that people are coming back through other channels that we can obviously speak to, and it isn't reliant on paid spend allocation.
I think then there's a question there around what actually is creating that retention in their businesses, particularly pertinent, I think, for the like mid seven figure brands that we've worked with recently, that are the guys that are really trying to break into that 8 figure consistent territory. They've probably had a couple of months where they operated an 8 figure run rate, but it's very sort of sporadic. And so you get into this question of, is retention being driven by our emails really effective? Or is our retention really ineffective currently, and we're going to solve that by just going into email or a significant amount of media spend? Or is it we're still actually having a product market fit discussion, and perhaps there's something wrong with the core SKU, the experience of using that product, that's actually meaning that, like, you're just really the solution is not going back into the ad account and looking at your exclusions and your testing structure. Like, how do you start solving for that question of, is this a potentially a product issue versus a media issue?
Any email guy who's truthful, so Angus,
Angus.
Josh Tay, who I've done a lot of content with, who's now the director of CTC email, they will both agree with me, and they've both said on content that retention is 95% product niche that you sit in. And so retention is really a product of the structure of the business model. And so if you sell clothes, if you're in fashion, I can almost show you exactly the bounds in which your retention will sit. Like, you're not going to get CPG numbers. You're also probably not going to be at 0% as long as your clothes are half decent. There's like a range and you're going to sit in there. And then there's
Hmm.
things you can do to optimize up and down, but you're going to be fixed. Same thing for CPG. Same thing for like, let's say furniture. Like, there's no furniture brand out there that has 50% profit lift by month 6. Like, just, it's structurally, the business is the way that it is, and it has its advantages, which is super high AOV, and then it has its disadvantages, which is super low LTV. And so it just really depends on where you want to play, and you need to understand the dynamics of the particular niche and industry that you're in. That's kind of number one. Number two is people can't come back and buy again if you don't have a consumable product and there's not other products to buy. And so step one, if you're not in consumables, is you need more products so that people can come back and be cross-sold into other things. A really good large example of this would be Ridge. For those that don't know, Ridge Wallet, $200 million a year business. They started by only selling wallets. Then they started diversifying into other product categories maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Big issue with their business model is no one comes back and buys again. Now, yes, there's a small cohort of people, and this will always be the case in every single business. There's a small cohort of people that buy 20 of them because they're just an avid fan and they buy all the different colors as they continue to drop new limited editions. Sure. But generally speaking, people don't come back and buy an indestructible wallet a second time. And so because of that, the only way that they get any kind of LTV is through different product lines getting spun up. And then because I have trust in the brand and the product of the wallet was good, when I'm looking for a suitcase at some point in the future, I go, maybe I'll consider Ridge's suitcases because I use the wallet every day and it's super high quality. And every suitcase I've tried is super low quality. So maybe that'll translate. Is Ridge going to have super high LTV because of different product lines? Probably not. Like the cross-sell ability across a wallet to a suitcase to wedding bands to whatever their other product lines are going to be in the future, like there's going to be like a 5% take there.
Yeah.
And so even then, you have to acknowledge the structural position of the business, which is that they're not set up for repeat revenue. And so they have to be unbelievably profitable on acquisition, which they are able to do for like multiple different reasons.
Mm. I mean, like if you were to take a local example of that, I would say like a brand like Balroy has done that quite well over the last 10 years, right? Like I have a Balroy leather wallet that I bought in, I think, 2013 or 14. It's still a great wallet. I don't need another wallet. But I have a Balroy key cover. I have a Balroy backpack. I have a Balroy laptop sleeve because I know they just make awesome quality products that are really nicely designed. And so they have retained me through that. But that is a very expensive way to develop retention because they clearly pour probably millions of dollars into R&D, as I'm sure Ridge does. I think that like in terms of a learning for the smaller brands, there's some brands I've spoken to recently that have like caught fire with their one like hero SKU. And it might be something that someone buys once. It might be someone buys in a small bundle. They buy 3 or 5 of them because it's just easier to have more around the house, something like that. I'm thinking of something like a hair clip or some kind of like storage product or like something that is useful to have like one in your car, one in the house, that kind of thing. And then they get to this point where they're like, okay, well, like for us to solve retention, our next product has to be a consumable that's sort of loosely associated with the core SKU. And the sort of risk point I see there is, one, you're talking like NPD is really expensive, but 2, you then get into a model where you're actually talking about a totally new category and like a totally new type of business, a new type of manufacturing. Are there ways that those brands should be thinking about or approaching their scaling differently in terms of, is it new markets? Is it new channels that perhaps are less risky than those sorts of major swings at investment?
Yeah. Hormozy has a really good framework. He's got a few YouTube videos about it, which is that people always look at the disadvantages of the business model that they're in and then look at the advantages of other ones. So everyone's like, oh, software would be so good, or like ecom would be so good. But then once you're actually in the business model, you realize all of the structural disadvantages and you go, oh, this sucks as much as the other one. And then you realize that every business model has significant disadvantages and it's just structurally built in. The same thing exists at like a sub niche level in ecom, which is that everyone selling like one-time products is like, oh, it'd be so good to sell consumables. And then everyone selling consumables is like, oh, CAC is so high on first purchase, cash flow is terrible. I wish I just sold a high AOV single-use product. And so it is acknowledging that like there's no grass is greener on the other side. Like you were in the business model that you were in and it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. If you have a single product hero that isn't a consumable and you're like, oh, the way to fix this is to go into consumables, like, yeah, maybe if you're good at that, if you're going to create a good consumable and you're able to effectively resell to the existing customer demographic, that's going to be very reliant on product quality on the first product and people being convinced to then come back and buy on consumable products that you're selling them, which is a very, very different game. Like whether someone wants to ingest something or like put something on their body is very different from like buying a storage product that goes in their garage.
Mm.
And as you said, it's a very different manufacturing process and business overall. I could see like a world where it works. I would instead want to build out tangential products that solve similar problems that can hold spend on their own to diversify risk across the business. And so,
Mm.
similar to the Ridge approach, which is that when they're doing product launches, the big mistake that I think people make here is they do product launches as LTV plays because they think LTV is the solution to the business rather than just building out more primary hero products that can sustain spend at higher efficiencies. And so, someone might go, oh, people are buying a storage product. And so let's also give them like $10 tape that they can use to tape the storage product down or something. And it's like that probably isn't the play. You're probably better off figuring out some other storage product that's going to be tangential. Not everyone's going to buy it. In fact, it's probably not designed for a good cross sell, but it's designed to be able to hold media spend by its own and therefore help growth rate and diversify the risk within the business.
And
The big issue with single SKU products is that if there isn't retention, super high risk because someone can come in and just destroy you.
yeah. And I mean, like, I think what works well for Ridge there is like, even if they are quite different lines, like they're all very much the same customer avatar that they're sort of aiming at. Like it's the same brand identity. It's the same, like the Ridge customer that wants to be seen having the Ridge. It's almost like a fashion item at some level, right? The wallet. And so you can expand that into the key cover. You can expand that into the battery pack for your phone or the phone case. And, phone cases, I heard him and Sean Frank talking on operators recently, is like sort of a nicer product in that kind of category because you're getting into a lot of people that will buy one every year when they upgrade their phone or every 2 years. So there's some natural sort of dynamics there. I think again, if we flip back to the other side to the consumables brand, there's also, I think, an underlying narrative that we speak to a lot, particularly in those consumables brands that have made it to like $4, $5, $6 million a year, and they're trying to go to 10 or 15 or 20. And thinking about, the way I get there is I'll just start offering subscriptions, and naturally my retention will go to the moon. I'll never churn a customer. What's the thinking behind how we introduce a subscription offer? How do we assess the performance of that offer versus, say, just the play of, we're going to expect people are going to come back because it's an amazing product and an amazing experience?
Yeah. If you're running, so I've heard this so many times, which is like, we should just get more subscriptions and the business will grow. And it's like, well, obviously, but the issue with getting subscriptions is there's a higher CAC. It's more expensive to get someone on to a subscription than it is to get someone to buy one time, obviously. And then the question becomes like, okay, if the CAC is higher, what is the difference in the LTV of subscription versus one time? And usually subscription is higher, normally go about like 30 to 50%. But then you just have to weigh up like, is the CAC 30 to 50% higher? And most of the time it is. And so you're paying a higher CAC, you're making less GP on first purchase, but then you're making the same amount of profit after 1 to 2 years. It's like you may as well just push one time because you have better cash flow and you end up in the same profit position, pulling it forward so you can actually go faster. So just like the logic of let's just throw a subscription in and hope for the best, I don't think it's the best call for most people unless the numbers actually make sense and you can acquire subscription customers very cheaply. I also think that if you're going to run a subscription model, you are all in or you're not in at all. So you see this in IM8 Health, which is the David Beckham brand that went from 0 to, what are they doing? 200 million. It's like the fastest growing direct to consumer brand of all time. And they're subscription only. You can't buy one time on their website. You're forced into subscription. Then they value stack very, very well. I'd actually suggest anyone listening go to their website and go through the checkout process because as you go through, you will get like 6 free things as you're going through on first order as a massive value stack to where the first order almost seems like you're getting everything at no margin. You're like, how are they possibly giving me this much stuff on first purchase? And number one, they probably know the unit economics well and they're still making money. But number two is they're locking everyone into subscriptions.
Mm.
And so their LTV is probably insanely good. off the back of it. So yeah, I would kind of, if I was starting a CPG brand, I'd go one or the other. I think Runes is the same. I think Runes is only subscription and you can't go one
Hmm.
time.
I think, and this is a wildly anecdotal take, but like my sort of experience of looking at a lot of like PDPs and checkout pages as a consumer, you look at it and you go, oh, I can save 15 or 20% picking the subscription option, and it says I can cancel anytime. I'll just cancel immediately. And so in that scenario, you're just giving away margin immediately, and you'd want to have a look at what the actual LTV is. Do they actually make it to the second, third, fourth order really consistently? I also find I churn out of that flow quite a lot. If I go and like before I commit to the subscription, I go and check their reviews and that kind of thing. And you just see a bunch of like, this is a scam. They won't let you cancel, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
so it's like, again, if we get back to this idea of like paid media is not just going to solve, or it's perhaps paid media can drive really consistent returning revenue, but doing so very non-incrementally or even unprofitably. Um, there's a CX sort of kerfuffle there that you need to think about before you go the subscription route as well. And so it's more complex than just how we lean into media buying to drive that.
Yeah. There's inherent risk in subscriptions, which is why like CAC is much higher and conversion rates are much lower
Mm,
on subscription options. And yeah, most of the people that take, if there's a multi option and there's a massive offer on the subscription, people are just going to take it to be able to hack the system and then get a discount too, which is why I
mm.
said, like, you need to look at the actual LTV numbers off the back of subscriptions, because although you might inherently think subscriptions are healthier from an LTGP perspective, it might not be, or it might be 10% and not really worth the additional cost.
So if we start to wrap up the conversation, what are the key areas where you think, like, where is there a conversation, or where is the one or two things that a brand should really be thinking about, or where their paid media spend belongs after that first purchase?
Yeah. There's probably two different conversations to have here. Conversation number one is that how much spend goes to existing customers is based on the industry that you're in.
Hmm.
I'll give some major industry examples so that you can identify where you are and then translate accordingly. If you're in consumer packaged goods, you do want allocation to existing customers. You just want it to be low and you want it to be segmented. It's hard to give a ballpark, but the way to
Yeah.
get an indication is to just, you can do two things. Number one, you can look at frequency on existing
Yep.
customers and you can go,
Yep.
do we really need to be targeting existing customers 25 times a month? Probably not. And so you can pull budgets.
Yeah.
Number two, you can see how many existing customers do you have? What's your CPMs? And therefore, how much money should we spend and how many times do we think we need to target these people? And what you'll
Mm,
figure out doing that calculation is like, oh, we have 300,000 existing customers and we only need to spend $2,000 a month to hit them all. It's like, oh, wow. Okay. It really puts into perspective how little you actually need to spend to hit
mhm,
such a large customer list.
mhm,
So that's that. On fashion, you need allocation to existing customers as well. Once again, do that calculation, make it reasonable, run conversion lift experiments in Meta to be able to see the incrementality of those existing customer campaigns. The reason why you need to spend in fashion is because there are new arrivals, generally every 1, 2, or 4 weeks. And because of that, your existing customers will see the new arrivals on email, SMS,
mhm.
organic socials, etc. But some of them won't. And those some that don't, it's good to still get it in front of them. And that's why there is value there. If you're in pretty much any other industry, your spend should be near zero unless you can actually quantify the impact that it's having within the business. So that's like section one. The second component of the answer there is what we haven't addressed is what actually does drive returning customer revenue, other than like the structural niche of the business. And that is email, SMS, and organic socials. Like those direct communication channels where you own the list, like earned media,
Mm,
that is ultimately where you are going to drive majority of the incremental lift in returning customer revenue. If you go from not sending emails to sending emails, suddenly you'll obviously get more returning orders. If you go from not posting or engaging with people on organic to posting and engaging with people on organic, well, guess what? A lot of the people that are loyal buyers of yours also probably follow you in some capacity on socials. And so they're going to see the new product drops. They're going to see what you're doing, and it's going to remind them to buy again. You can also do direct mail. I've seen people have a lot of success with direct mail and ecom because
Yeah,
no one
right.
does it. Issue in Australia is there aren't really any providers on ecom direct mail, but in the US there's some good ones and people see good returns there. So I'll do that as well.
Interesting. That's the first reference to direct mail I think I've heard in maybe 5 years in working in agencies.
Yeah,
Um,
it's when people aren't doing something, then there's white space and opportunity for you to hop in.
Absolutely. Like I hear it talked about a lot in like sales channels, like B2B selling and that kind of thing. I feel like it's a common reframe of like, have you thought about X, Y, Z? But no, thank you for that. We'll leave it there. Um, Hopefully some useful takeaways to think about where are you actually allocating that budget most efficiently. And if it's something that you feel like you might need a second opinion or a second look at, there'll be links below to reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. Thank you very much, Nathan.
Thank you.